Oh my gosh. Did I do that right? I think so. And there's a thing over here and a button. And I think it's this one that'll get me started. Is that one it? Did that do the thing? There it is. And hey there, friends. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whatever time it might be in your part of the world. Welcome back to the live stream. This is Learn C Sharp with CSharpFritz. My name is Jeff Fritz. You can find me all over the internet. I am CSharpFritz. It's so good to see you. I hope you're having a good morning, a good afternoon, a good evening, wherever you might be. Let me bring on the chat room. It's beautiful and sunny here in Philadelphia, looking out over the skyline. Nice, wonderful May day. Look at that. That's beautiful. Let's talk to the chat room. There's all kinds of stuff going on. They're right over here. We're broadcasting live on Twitch and YouTube. You may be watching the recording out there. We're going to talk to the folks in the chat room for the next 40 minutes, have a little bit of AMA time so they can ask questions and we can talk about things that are happening in tech, talk about what happened at Microsoft Build last week, and have a good time getting settled in. And then we'll start talking about .NET Aspire and learning about how we can use .NET Aspire with databases to improve our demo application. I got to make sure I say it right with the special effects. The Big Bad Blog. Oh, yeah. Emphasis on the bad. We're only on episode 2, so it's not exactly great yet, but we're getting better. So, more on that in a minute. Let me say hello to the chat room. They're right over here. How you doing there, chat room? Let me scroll up here. BC is here on YouTube and says it's rare for them to watch YouTube live, but here I am excited to learn from CSharpFritz. Hello from Birmingham, England. Thank you so much, BC. Great to see. Absolutely. Right? YouTube live means you can watch content like this on your TV, on your YouTube app, on your tablet or your phone, and your browser, of course, wherever you might be. So it's important for me that I'm taking this type of content to wherever you are so that you can watch regardless of what medium you have available to you. And that's why we're on Twitch as well. So folks can interact and hang out over there. Lanky Scottish Nerd is here on Twitch. Hello, good to see you. Sephiroth on YouTube. How you doing there? Afsal on YouTube. Welcome. Serdar, how's it going there? Manoj on Twitch. Hello, hello. I love the Clippy emote with the fiery hands there, Lanky Scottish Nerd. Much appreciate. Kleberson is here from Brazil. Welcome in. It's great to have some of our Brazilian tuning in. Easy for me. Hang on. Let me have a little more coffee here. Great to see you. Sean says, hello there, Philly neighbor watching from Delco. Oh, my goodness. Hope you're doing fine over there and the water is nice and warm and you're having a good time. How you doing there? Michael Bond, AJ Tandon on YouTube is watching. It'll be good knowledge today. I hope so. We're going to be very focused on database today. Last time we introduced .NET Aspire and we talked about getting an existing application and adding it to the .NET Aspire stack. It's not a framework. It's a stack that enhances your application. And notice I'm not saying .NET application. It's a stack that enhances your application and, in fact, your entire application system. That's more than just a website, but also, like we're going to see today, your database interactions, your other microservices that you might deploy. And you don't have to use .NET for all those things. You're going to see today, we're going to light up Postgres and interact with that and take our little web application that was just reading Markdown from disk, and we're going to migrate it so that it's using Entity Framework and interacting with the Postgres database. And we'll even turn on pgadmin so we can inspect and see what's going on inside our database. I'm going to get some music playing here, and I'll get into reading some more of those greetings. This is the Stream Beats Synthwave playlist. Let me run up here somewhere. Let's start with this. This is called Space Mesh. I don't have the playlist showing on the screen. This is music that's DMCA free. It's royalty free. It's kind of groovy, nice to have in the background while we're talking about tech. Big thanks to Harris Heller and his team of creators for making this music we're listening to today. And Aviol, how you doing there in Albania? Welcome in. Hamza with a big hello on YouTube. Is it Tofi82 from Islamabad, Pakistan, watching on YouTube? How you doing there? Aviol asks, how do we connect with existing databases and existing outside resources? I got you. Remind me when we get into the demo, and I will make sure that, in fact, I'm going to add it to my list here. After I add Postgres, let's also show connecting to existing database. Absolutely. It's on the list there. Thank you so much for the question. Absolutely. Yeah, got to make sure you drink your water, stay hydrated. Here in Philadelphia, we don't say water. Most of the world says water. You know, H2O. That fine clear beverage that we all enjoy and you find in the ocean and the rivers and whatnot. In Philadelphia, it's made from the things that trees are made of. It's water. We pronounce words kind of funny here. So, if you're going to the beach, you're going to the coast over the summer, you're going down the shore. And when you pick up your Android device, your Apple portable mobile device, that's your phone. Okay, we pronounce things funny in Philadelphia. I've worked very hard to lose my accent. How you doing there? Is it Murnahid? How you doing there in Azerbaijan? Welcome in. PC Nerd. And didn't I just see you? Alvaro is here from Uruguay watching on YouTube. Gabrielle, is it Gabrielle or Gabriel? I think it's Gabriel from Costa Rica. How you doing there? Sean on YouTube asks, has anyone gone over how to use Aspire when your code is separated into different solutions? I will touch on that today. Yeah, that's right, Michael. Do not drink the ocean water. Don't do that. Aviol is upgrading a current project with Aspire, and it is a much better development experience. Nice. Okay. All right. Join me that John, says Oakleus. Yes. And get a nice Philly water ice. Absolutely. Go down to Rita's. You're going to order a water ice, but don't just order a water ice. Make sure you get a gelati. If you're going to get a gelati, make sure you get it with the mango and the vanilla custard. Okay? How you doing there? Ilyan is here from Bulgaria. Welcome, man. My gosh, I was in Bulgaria in October. Love visiting that part of the world. Hey, Stallone, how you doing there in Kenya? Hello, hello. Cause R says Aspire plus ASP.NET plus Orleans equals love. Not going to debate that at all. I think you're onto something. There. Totally. Be aspired? Nah. Be inspired. Let me bring up that question that we had from Sean here. I've got Tags app running, and how far in are we? 32 minutes. Let me set a timer for 32 minutes. There we go. So we got the phone keeping the timer for us. Let me head over and let's talk about this question from Sean. It's right over here. It's in the code. I got to go over to that side of the studio. Hey, look, there it is. We've got Tags app running. We're capturing your questions, putting it up on the big board here so we can talk about them. Like this question we just got from Sean. Has anyone gone over how to use Aspire when your code is in separate solutions? Here's the deal, right? Aspire definitely encourages you to keep things together, right? That's where you're going to get a best experience. However, the tools that you see, like we demonstrated last time when we called the add project method in our app host, where our entry point for a .NET Aspire application, add project is it provides that generic that generic type to specify projects. That's really just a friendly wrapper around a format that specifies the actual folder location where your CS project is, where your project file is that you should be adding. It does all the same orchestration to load that project, whether you reference it using the generic type format that is so easy for us to use when our projects are in the same solution, or if you specify and you pass in a string that is the location on disk for those other projects that live outside the solution, maybe live in other Git repositories. You need to have them locally, and you can then point to those other locations on disk outside the current folder. You're going to run into a little bit of confusion working with that when you commit your source code, and other folks might clone your repository, because if they don't have the same folder structure as you have, where you have your solution in folder 1 and that other project you're referencing is up and over and it's in a projects folder over here in folder 2 somewhere else on disk, it might be a little bit trickier for them to load up and get that reference to that other project. Stuff to be aware of. It can be done, but balancing how you reference and pull together those things is something that, quite frankly, we don't have a best practice or a best technique for it yet, because the product just went RTM last week. So let me catch up on some of the other questions here in chat, other comments. Hey, Dr. Cox, good to see you there on Twitch. Yes, I did know Aspire has ASP in the name. Simple Life is here from Bengaluru. Hello, Bengaluru? Yes. Tags at me with .NET Aspire. That's I think that's coming. I think that's definitely coming. Manoj asks, does Aspire work outside Visual Studio? Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Will it's compatible with other .NET languages? Yes, it is. It's just a question of referencing and loading up those projects. So it's not the first class way to do it, but it is possible. Yep. You can imagine having a shell script or something to organize the project folders. Sean, I like where you're going there, and Shurikan, I like where you're kind of on the same path here. I like both of these comments here. A shell script or something. Maybe there's a super project that has the Aspire app host and service defaults configured, that has Git submodules with the appropriate folder structure for those other projects that you want to stitch together. So in that way, you clone that super project that includes those other repositories as submodules, and everything's organized in a standard way. And a shell script to kind of put things in the right place from that super project that contains the Aspire configuration might be a good way to do that as well. But Shurikan is I think on the same path, and this is something that we as a community kind of have to hammer out and try and figure out what feels good. That dev structure could be automated using a container or some scripts. Yeah. I like the idea of Git submodules. I appreciate, though, that when you use Git submodules, they can be a little difficult to maintain and update properly back and forth between each other. It's doable, but there's something there. I want to make sure I answer this question from Manoj. Aspire absolutely works outside of Visual Studio. In fact, last night I was writing code on my Linux laptop with .NET Aspire for this demo that we're going through today. I don't have the full text and screenshots to go with today's lesson ready yet. However, all the demos are done, and we'll be able to at least walk through that today and talk about it. And I did all of that using Visual Studio Code, and I was working on inside a Linux terminal, building, debugging with .NET Aspire. Remember, from our first episode, let me go to the GitHub repository, and I'll make sure that I get this link into the chat. So GitHub.com CSharpFritz Big Bad Blog. There's the link in chat for you. The requirements to run .NET Aspire are Docker or Podman and the .NET 8 SDK, and you can use that to install the .NET Aspire workload. You can use whatever editor you'd like. Of course, working with Visual Studio 2022 or Visual Studio Code. There's great tools in there and extensions that will help you and make some of these Aspire tasks a heck of a lot easier to do. We're going to be doing a bit of refactoring today, so I'm going to lean into Visual Studio 2022 for today's session. So that's all you need. You want to work in VI, you want to work in NeoVim, you want to work in Emacs, you want to work in Notepad, go for it. JetBrains Rider has extensions that help support Aspire development and management. So there's absolutely tooling out there you can use if you'd like to enhance that development experience. So definitely stuff that I want to make sure that folks are aware of and you can tinker with and learn from. Oh, let me go to this. That's a great comment from UNESCO. Can we use Aspire with a Raspberry Pi cluster? I happen to have a cluster behind me here on the other side of the studio. Yes. So Aspire it ends at the edge of the developer experience. Once you're done laying out, here's what my system looks like, not your application, your system, you can then use other tools to deploy out to Azure, AWS, or a series of Kubernetes clusters, taking advantage of the way that you've declared the topology of your application system inside that app host project like we saw last time. Those tools, those other tools, consume the output of .NET Aspire, and you don't even have to use them. You can deploy with whatever tools that you like, but if you use some of those tools, it will help you to properly allocate Azure Container Apps, resources on AWS, and with Aspirate, this other tool that's available, it will help you to declare your kubectl files appropriately so that you can deploy, build the containers and run your application on Kubernetes, and then you can run it across a Raspberry Pi cluster. It's all doable. It's a question of how much do you want to do by hand, how much do you want automated, and nothing says that you're required to use one of those tools. When you build and deploy, you can certainly hook up and use the various environment variables and names that are being passed between the elements of your application system. You can wire them up however you'd like. Declare them inside of environment variables, in a key vault, in something like Azure Active Directory, so it's fetched from there. It's up to you where you store it. Aspire will help facilitate and deploy those in a secure first mechanism in a bunch of these locations. So, love the question. Thank you so much. Let me resume over there. Let's see here. How you doing there, Mehmet on YouTube? Sean says, let's go to that one. I could be wrong, but Aspire seems like a code-level configure multiple startup projects that comes with a unified configuration and dashboard. You've got just one of the 4 pillars of Aspire there. You're right. That's a big piece that we're talking about. The second piece that we're going to see today, and is going to become a little bit more, a little bit clearer, is it also provides for us service discovery. When you have just a single website running inside of your development environment, that's a piece of cake. You're just going to localhost 5000 or localhost 8080 or wherever that's hosted locally so you can see and interact with the website. But what happens when you want to start up a development database that you can work with? Where's the database listening? Is it on the same port that you expect it to be? Is it on 5432? Is it somewhere else? Are you running it inside of a Docker container and it's been remapped onto a different IP address? And how does that start and stop? How do we connect to it? What's the name of it? That service discovery is the next piece that Aspire gives us. Sensible service discovery with names for those services that we get to specify as developers. That way, we have a clear nomenclature for our services, and we're not responsible, and we're not concerned with looking over our shoulders at our friends on the DevOps team and the folks that work out in managing the operations out in production, who have the Garfield server over here, and you're trying to connect to it from the Harry Potter web server, and Harry Potter needs to connect to Garfield, but you need to go across the Force network. And in order to get on the Force network, you need to use the Enterprise VPN. As a developer, we can give clear names that make sense to us in our development environment, and let those folks out in DevOps and operations world name and organize things however they'd like. So this is a good summary of just one of the pillars. Service discovery we're going to see today is number 2. Number 3 that we're going to see probably in 2 or 3 weeks here. It might be next week. It's probably going to be the week after. Is going to be metrics, measuring metrics, and adding our own metrics in, so that we can see exactly what's going on, how things are performing and interacting inside of our system. And distributed logging is the last one. And having that reliability is also baked in here also, but metrics and distributed logging, as well as health checks, are part of that. Give us as developers a much clearer picture of what's going on as we build a system. It's the biggest pain in the neck to try and debug or read logs, and I need to come from this website over here, and did it go across the network properly? Yes. Okay. Did it reach my service properly? Yeah, okay. Did the service hit the database? No, the service couldn't find the database. Why? Well, the service was looking for a database named Garfield, but in my development system, it's called DB. You're going to be able to see that distributed log. We'll show some examples of that. And this is part of what makes Aspire attractive and what's going to make you more productive as a developer. And to the questions from earlier, you might want to stand up the DB database for you as a developer to manage and tinker with. But I will also show you how you can set up a configuration so that you can connect to an existing application and use that. Okay? So these are all really important topics that I'm glad you're asking about. Folks like Sean here are asking about. I want to make sure that you out there ask about, because it's easy to get caught up in, Aspire's just a dashboard. No. There's a couple other things that happen in that dashboard that are orchestrated and wire up to your application system that are going to make it easier for you as a developer. The days of crawling through Docker container logs like an archaeologist scrambling to find dinosaur fossils are over. Because there are filters and log levels and ways for you to search through your distributed logs and be able to see everything in a free and easy to use dashboard. Free as in beer free. Anybody can use it anywhere you'd like. The dashboard is completely open source for you to use and hook up to whatever you'd like. All right, let me catch up here. Hey, Kanawana Gasaki, hello. That's another good question. Let's bring that one forward. So where does Aspire live? Is it in a container next to other services, or does it live on a host machine? Here's the thing. Aspire is a stack, right? Aspire is not one thing. It's a collection of tools and libraries that snap onto, that wrap your application system. The dashboard lives in a container. That's a thing that is listening and orchestrating and helping to make the rest of your application system work. The coordination and passing things around by the app host runs as a local application. It runs directly on the metal when you start up your application. And that's okay. In developer mode, I'm fine with that. finally, when we build our when we build and publish, if you will, our Aspire application, and you never really publish it, that's the point where it generates this manifest that it's a manifest in JSON format that those other tools can pick up and help you deploy your application system to, as I mentioned earlier, Azure, AWS, and Kubernetes. And you don't need to do that. If you want to just deploy the various pieces of your application using GitHub Actions, Azure DevOps, Travis CI, whatever it might be, you can still do that. Nothing says that you're required to pick up and use all the features of Aspire. I want to make sure that you're aware of what all those features are as we go along here. Hey, Thindall. Good to see you. Welcome in. Hello, hello. Aspire is what I do to have stuff happen. Well, yes. Manoj asks, is Docker a prerequisite for Aspire? Yes. Well, Docker or Podman. You have to use one of those because the Aspire tools bring in other features using containers. This way, it's very isolated, self-contained way for us to add into our application system things like Redis cache, a RabbitMQ service bus. You want to bring in Postgres? Sure, you don't need to go install it all locally. Aspire will facilitate using Docker or Podman, and we provided some information about how to set up Podman in that previous episode over here on, and I'll call back out to the GitHub repository in episode 1 in the notes here. There's instructions about how to set up Podman. By default, it tries to use Docker desktop on Windows and Mac, or just Docker on your Linux machine. But if you need to use Podman, there's an environment variable here you can set up, and the Aspire tools will use Podman instead. And I'm making sure that I use the appropriate terms here. Okay, Aspire isn't a framework; it's a stack of tools and libraries. Okay, very, very important to keep that clear and separated. So thanks for the question, Manoj, with the question right there. We're using Tags app to organize and queue up your questions here, coming in from YouTube and Twitch. Sean with another question here. I'll grab that one, and we'll talk about this. So how does the deployment work when the applications get their configuration or service discovery from the app host? If you run the application on its own without the app host, it wouldn't get its config. So what app host does when it passes configuration in, and we're going to see this today, and I'll make sure that I call this out. What it does is it passes a connection string to things, or other API keys or whatever, as environment variables into that service that requires it. So even if you're running just locally, or you want to deploy to pick up your application and push it out to whatever local server that you have on premises somewhere, just go over to that other local server and set up those environment variables for that running application, and you've got it. But that's right. That's the you're cobbling together your deployment configuration, versus if Aspire deploys it, it'll actually deploy a key vault that has those configuration keys in there and share those secrets, connection strings and whatnot, into your application components, your application system components appropriately. I'm making sure I add notes here about some of the things that I need to make sure I show you during our demo today. This is good. I really appreciate the questions here to kind of queue up what kinds of things you want to learn as we talk through today's session. Let me see here. Greg says, There seems to be issues on the latest Ubuntu 24.04 starting up Docker desktop. I'm running the 22.04 on my machine, and I didn't have an issue with it. And there seems to be workarounds on GitHub. Okay, I'm gonna have to take your word on that. Aspire Ubuntu 24.04 Docker. I don't know. No. Okay. Can we get .NET Aspire? No. Do you have a link to that? You can share? It's not popping up on the first page of search results. So this sounds like it might be a little bit of an issue. Something changed clearly between 22.04 and 24.04. And the tools aren't wired up for it yet. Oh man, my pin is here hiding on the other side. I need to move it over so it's on this side. Let me see there. Let me finish putting this back on. There we go. We have about 10 minutes left here. Baspian with a comment here. I've been exploring Aspire, and I think it's rather hard to interpret the information delivered, talking about the metrics. What I don't like is the fact you must deploy to containers. What if I want to deploy my web app to an Azure web application? First things first, let's talk about the metrics. You're right. We're looking at a V1. That type of feedback about not being able to interpret, absolutely, that's feedback that the team wants to hear and can take action to make that a little bit easier to work with and interpret. That's good feedback to hear, and there is a feedback form. Our friend Tim Hewer shared a feedback form on Twitter yesterday. Let me see if I can find that real quick so I can get it shared, because I want to make sure that your voice is heard, Baspian, about that. Looking. You know what? I even retweet. Ah, there it is. .NET Aspire feedback. There we go. So if you use... I should have known what this was going to be. I'll copy that link and share it, because the team absolutely wants to hear your feedback on that. Let me go to the second part of this question. What if I want to deploy my web app to an Azure web application? You're right. You're absolutely right. We're at V1. When you think about the the universe of services that the team's trying to support and deploy, they focused on just delivering containers. Azure web applications, absolutely. The team has heard those requests. Also being able to deploy to things like a VM. How do I deploy to a VM if I want to do that? The team absolutely hears you, and those are things that are under consideration for a next release. They're prioritizing, looking at, and trying to figure out where exactly these pieces fit together. For a V1 after six months of development, they did a pretty good job getting Azure Container Apps orchestrated and delivered, and delivering a nice secure solution that gives us some very good defaults when we deploy and use Azure Container Apps. But they've absolutely heard these comments about, hey, I want to use app service instead. Yeah, it's on the agenda. It's something that they are already talking about. And of course, the Aspire repository is open source. You're welcome to go and check out what's going on there. Helps if I put the slash in the right place there. You're welcome to go check it out and see exactly what they're working on. There's issues here. You can write and contribute documentation if you'd like. If you want to contribute a feature, I was talking last night to one of the gentlemen who maintains the mass transit library. And he started going through and putting together a sample after he learned a little bit more about Aspire as well. It's great to see the interest in this. It is open source, open for contribution. They want to hear from you. Check out that .NET Aspire GitHub repository so you can see what's going on. The team is very clear. Look at this. 10 hours ago, they were in modifying their GitHub. 2 days ago, modifying their engineering system, and so on and so forth. Heck, just yesterday, they were working on their tests. Check it out. All kinds of stuff going on out here, and you can learn how they build some of the things that they're working on. You want to see how Microsoft writes code? Check it out. It's all right here, clear and freely available for you to look at and learn from. Okay. Coming back over here to my moderation screen. Thank you so much. Oh yeah, Dopair, that's a great comment. That's a great question. I want to make sure we get to that question. Absolutely. I'm going to answer this one from Michael first, and then I'll come back to yours. Michael asks, will Aspire releases coincide with .NET releases going forward? V2 for .NET 10. Well, .NET 9 comes out in November, and I know they're working on features to ship with .NET 9. It should, the stack should snap to the rest of .NET framework and ship with it. However, .NET MAUI has issued statements where they're going to have quarterly releases because of how quickly the other frameworks in the .NET MAUI ecosystem version, talking about Swift, Apple development frameworks, Android, WinUI, with how quickly those operating systems and frameworks version, they release they have a quarterly release schedule to keep up with those. There's no declarative final statement about what the release schedule will look like for Aspire. As of right now, it's going to snap to the .NET release cycle and support cycle. However, we're a week into the first release. We'll see as folks begin to use the stack. We'll see how they feel about it, how it grows, and how the frequency of changes and support releases need to be issued for them to make better statements and reevaluate how long the support cycle will be or how frequently they need to make releases. That said, because many of the components to coordinate and orchestrate child services with .NET Aspire, and we're going to see like Postgres today or Redis, because those are managed as separate containers, they can be versioned pretty independently from the rest of the stack. So we'll see. This is something that we're still learning about, right? All of us as a community to get this working better. So I'm going to answer that with a candid depends. Let me go to Dopair's question here. And this is a great question I'd love to answer. Can I explain what this template, what does this template mean? HTTPS plus HTTP dashboard basket. Totally. What's going on here is for service discovery, the HTTP client that you're referencing there is going to attempt to use an HTTPS, a transport layer security connection, first. If that's unavailable, it's going to fall back to a standard HTTP port 80 type of connection. Okay. Underscore dashboard dot basket is the service locator name of the service that it's going to go look up and use. And I will make sure that we talk about the service discovery environment variables and how that works, because that's really interesting to use. And when we get in and show that, you're gonna look at this and go, Of course, that makes perfect sense to me. So, I will absolutely include that in our demos here today. We're just about done here. Let me grab just a couple final questions here. Good morning, Napalm. Good to see you. All right, I think we'll wrap up here with Baspian then. With the question, is it possible to connect Aspire to a database server running on Linux using Entity Framework? Yep. It looks like the only thing you can do so far is using Docker containers and have a very large pre-populated database. No. See, there's my timer. Nope. You're the ways that we've used and allocated and defined services absolutely encourage, in our demos, they encourage, hey, let me add a new database. I've already got a question on the board for during the demo of how do we connect to an existing database. I'll show you how to do that when we get into today's demos, okay? So you can absolutely do that. We appreciate and acknowledge that there are many brownfield applications out there, millions and millions of brownfield applications out there, existing applications that you're going to want to bring and level up your development experience using the tools and libraries that .NET Aspire makes available to you. We're gonna talk about and show you exactly how to do some of that in today's session, particularly with the database. Okay. I don't want that question. Resume. Come on. I see that one more question there from Manoj. Let's go. Load it up. You're not going to load it for me. I've broken it. I see it there in chat, but it's not coming through the tags app. Why is that? You're not going to load it up for me? Is that how this works? There it is. Yeah, it just took a second to load. Here we go. I'll answer this question because it's kind of a question for me as a tech instructor, influencer, personality. How do I learn new technologies like Aspire? Folks like you out there learn from people like me. You have a really hard time reading docs. Maybe it's just me. Something that I learned very early on is how I learn new technologies. I figured out how I best learn things. And quite frankly, I best learn by trying, tinkering, learning, breaking things, reading documentation, reading other people's code, and learning from it. I'm in a fortunate position where I can talk directly to some of the folks on the team. I had a great conversation a couple weeks ago with David Fowler. I'm in frequent contact with folks like Brady Gaster, who work on the team and help deliver some of these features that I'm showing you. I'm standing on their shoulders. Those folks did amazing work to deliver this first version of Aspire, and I'm echoing their lessons that they gave to me. I'm adding in a little bit of my knowledge of how folks learn and understand some of the technologies that we have out there to make it easier for people to learn these things in a way that's focused explicitly and distinctly on just the product. We're going to do a number of things here today that are going to move code around. And we're going to, unfortunately, get wrapped up in a bit of .NET code and moving .NET code between systems. And that's okay, because we're going to hit an interesting conundrum today about running entity framework migrations. That's okay. We're gonna work through that. And I'm going to show you how it stitches together and creates a better experience for us. And I learned that by reading documentation, by talking to some of these other folks, and trying it for myself. You have no idea how much time I spend writing code when I'm not on camera. IntelliSense is your sensei? Okay. Oaklea says, I guess partially due to my experience in general with similar tech, so I know what to try and know what it should be able to do. Yes, I think like they think now. So, yeah, absolutely. Let's get in. Let's talk about the project today and where we're going to go with this. I'm going to we're going to get into the Big Bad Blog. This is a demo that we're building. We're evolving here live on stream. It started as a very simple blog. And I even took some time and wrote a backstory. How many demos do you have that have a backstory? I wrote a little bit of a backstory. How this got started. Our friend Arthur, the author, wrote a simple block engine with C# and ASP.NET Core Razor pages that he was using to write some notes, publish some content using the Bootstrap CSS framework. Simple stuff. He resulted in a simple blog engine that looked okay for him and his friends to reference. He could post new messages by writing some markdown files in a posts folder. The engine would pick them up, display them on screen, and there's what it looks like. Nothing to it. For just a fella that's trying to publish and share some notes with friends, not bad. Does the job, nothing to it. It's a little bit of tinkering. That's part of the craft. That's right, Eric. But Arthur started to really enjoy the writing, and he wanted to do more. He wanted to be able to share the blog with his friends Annie, Chris, and Tyler. And he hoped that his friends would start writing on his blog, but the engine started getting a little more complicated. He wanted to add security, thumbnail management, comments, and other features that you typically find on blog engines. This workshop is our walkthrough of helping Arthur to take that simple blog engine, lift it up using .NET Aspire, .NET 8, GitHub, and Azure to make it into a full publishing platform that he can share his stories with the folks on the internet. Look at that. Isn't that a wonderful backstory? Settle in, children. Gather by the fire. Pull up your blankets. Let's enjoy. Fritz wrote a story for us. So, that's where we are. We want to migrate off of writing markdown files to disk. That's where we're going to start. That's where we're going to get into this. And if you look at where we ended last time, right, each one of these folders contains where we ended last time. Zero start is where the application started. This was the initial blog that Arthur, the author, was using. It was just a website, and don't worry about the AppDB. That's kind of an artifact from the blog, the ASP.NET Core Razor Pages template. But there's a post folder here with some markdown, and the markdown has, show me the raw content. There we go. Has a little bit of YAML up at the top to give you the title of the post, the date, the author. And for one person writing this, this is a fun, easy way to just write some content that I want to publish. Save it into this folder, and it can get picked up and presented on the website. Piece of cake. Anybody can do that. And here Arthur's talking about ordering some pizza. That's nice. GitHub formats the front matter with a nice table here for us. And for those types of interactions in management, sure, piece of cake, right? We like that. And what we started doing, and where we ended last time, was in Module 1, in our first step through this. Module 2, what we're doing today, will appear here when I finish writing it later today. Right, we introduced .NET Aspire, and we took that website and we put it into, no, don't say put it into. We started wrapping that website with the .NET Aspire stack. And that included creating an app host and creating a repository object that would allow us to interact with and read some of that post data. So we got an app host project that was added to the solution that defined exactly how we can work with and run the website. So, right, we got this first configuration of what the app host looks like. We added a reference to the blog project, and then we added it using this syntax. And that goes a little bit to the question we had earlier that, hey, these are living in the same solution. What happens if I want to run them, coordinate things that live in multiple solutions? And that's where I was saying, you don't have to use this generic syntax. You can, instead of just giving this a name, you can also specify the name and a location on disk where that other project lives. And we learned how the dashboard works, how it coordinates, and it shows our little web project there, and so on and so forth. And we started adding and looking at the logs. And we added in, just to see what it looks like, we added in output cache with Redis output caching in there, so that it was real easy to see. Here's Redis, there's the Docker container running and being called output cache, and how it saves the rendering of that content so that it runs very, very quickly for us. That's where we left off last time. All right, I want to make sure I recap that. So maybe you're watching this live, maybe you're watching the recording, and it's been a while since you saw the first episode. That's okay. That's where we left off. Now let's start. If we want to make those blog posts and the interaction with those blog posts available for more than one person to do, we can run into collisions if we're all trying to write files to disk. It's better to have a database. So let's talk about introducing and adding databases to .NET Aspire. So I'm going to open up, that's my branch that we're working on. I'm going to jump over to the main branch. Give me all the latest stuff. That's fine. Sure. All right. And I'm going to drop into that place that we left off. So introducing Aspire is where we left off at the end of the last episode. When we finish here, there's an episode 2 folder that you'll see become available. That will contain where we left off today. Okay, so let's start here, and we'll begin introducing database providers and talking about how we can use that. Sean asks, have I tried HTMX with Razor pages? No, and I'm not going to chase the latest framework every 2 or 3 months. Let it get hardened, let folks commit to it for a little bit, and then we'll figure it out. These things come and go very quickly. I'm not going to commit to something that folks might disappear from and no longer use in July. So let's see how it evolves here in May 2024. It's been around for a couple months. It's picking up speed. Let's see what happens. What is .NET for me? What do you mean? What does that mean? Yes, start and your solution file name opens Visual Studio. Yes, yeah. So if you want to start working with databases and you want to add in and work with a database system inside your application, right? Typically what we end up doing is, as a web developer, somebody who's using .NET, using ASP.NET, you're going to go into your application, here in my application configuration, and I would start doing something like, well, gosh, here's the way that the template creates and activates a SQLite database. Go get a connection string from my configuration called default connection, and that's sitting here inside my app settings. Right? And remember, in ASP.NET, that value can be overridden with an environment variable. But go get that connection string, and we're going to set up an entity framework context called application DB context, and that's this thing over here, and it inherits from an identity DB context. And if we look at the source code for that Visual Studio will decompile for me, we can see that this contains information about users, about roles, and roles that have claims associated with them, users that have roles, and so on and so forth. And this is built for us by default when we inherit from that identity DB context. We get all of that for us by default when we start using this little bit of security that comes out of the box with our ASP.NET Core applications. Okay, let me get my gunners on here. There we go. So that's cool. This gives me a nice entry point to building and delivering and working with that existing database and setting up the connection string and configuring identity over here. That's nice. But realistically, these types of things can change, can move. And when we think about building a distributed application system, this type of configuration, I want to be more loosely coupled. I don't want to hard code the location of my database into a configuration file. The provider that I'm using, I don't want to hard code into my website, because if that changes, if the way that I interact with it moves, suddenly all my front end code needs to be updated, and the maintenance, you want to talk about technical debt. If your manager, your development team manager, if your tech department director talks about technical debt, having to change services, database services, those dependent features, is a pain in the neck, because you're going to have to rewrite in how many different places, and where all does it touch and interact with that. This is why we want to move some of those database concerns out of our web project. Decouple, and let's build and work with a database that Aspire will manage for us, configure for us, and give us a connection string that we can use that works with that configuration. So everything to configure and start up Aspire starts here in the app host. And there's providers that are available, packages, and here in Visual Studio, we have this convenient add .NET Aspire package menu that goes out to NuGet and looks for specifically .NET Aspire packages. And you're going to see Owner Aspire. These are curated packages that the Aspire team is putting together, and either putting together themselves or approving through a curated process from software vendors that make wiring up features to .NET Aspire a good experience. And it's clearly taking a little bit of time here doing the search. Come on, go do that searching. Thank you. So there you can see there's database features that pop up in here that we can bring in. We already saw a little bit about using Redis, right? The in-memory database that's available out there. But there's Postgres, there's SQL Server that you can use, Cosmos DB. Continue scrolling. There's MongoDB. Somebody was asking about MongoDB. You can bring in MongoDB if you'd like. There's Oracle, Quadrant. You want to use, right? The vector database. There, that's available. Okay. It's a growing collection. We're only on V1 here, but it's a growing collection that you can bring in, orchestrate, and use. Oh, it's very similar to dependency injection. We're going to see that in a little bit. You never considered configs to be hard-coded? It's a little bit of a stretch for me to say hard-coded, but definitely the wire up to the provider, right? The provider type, SQLite in the default case, is hard-coded. And it's something that we'd like to be a little bit more loosely coupled. Node.js, yeah, you can absolutely do Node.js in here. Where is it? There you go. You can orchestrate and set up an application with Node, with Express, with NPM. Absolutely, you can bring that in. We're not talking about that today. Let me focus on and let's bring in. I like to use Postgres, but MySQL is in here also. There's MySQL, right? So Lots of stuff that you can bring in and work with. So I'm just going to install and bring in the Postgres hosting package. Now, this is going to work with and use a Postgres running in a container. I happen to have the container already downloaded and on my system, so it'll run through a little bit of that faster for us. Yes, they start up and manage the life of that container as part of your development workflow. All right. Yes, configuration configuration changes between your environments, deploying from your development environment into stage and eventually production. The location and managing that configuration is something that we as developers and our DevOps engineers, our friends that do that, they struggle with. The easier we can make it for everybody, the better experience that we'll all have, and the smoother the integration and deployment experience will be. So, all right, I brought in Postgres. It's got a couple updates here for us. No matter. Fine, go away. So let's start adding Postgres into our system. So I like to organize this file so that it's clear that these are components of the system. This is program CS inside my app host, right? This is where we're orchestrating and not orchestrating. This is where we're defining the topology of our application system. So I'm actually going to add some regions here, and my friend Steve Smith who does not like regions is not going to be happy with this. I'm sorry, Steve. I'm apologizing now, but I think this is a nice way to organize this for now. Let's say this is where our Redis cache is, right? Because then I can collapse that up and I can hide all that goo, right? And down here, this is the actual website, right? So the regions work nicely in Visual Studio Code, in Rider to help hide some of this so we can stay focused on the things that we want to build, right? It helps us to organize that a little bit. So let me create a region here for my Postgres database. Thank you. And I'll end that region down there. So I can set up and define a database server by just starting off by saying builder, there, you can see it right there, add Postgres. And let's call this DB server, right? Why not? So now I've got a database server. Now, of course, you have a database server, and database servers contain multiple databases. Well, I'm going to want to put my blog posts into a database of posts. So let's do that. Let's create an actual... That's not bad. That's not bad. I could call it Big Bad Blog. Sure, why not? Let's do that. I can also specify the schema if I'd like. I'm not going to do that just yet, but I need to make the knowledge of the database, the existence of that, available to my website. So just like I did with reference here for the cache, I'll include here with reference DB. And now it knows about the individual database running on the database server. So we need to allocate both a server and a database instance so that it knows what those are. Let me run this and show you how this is connected. And that'll help to answer some of the other questions we had about, well, what about existing databases? And the name of that, how does it know where that is and how to interact with that? I got you. I got you. So here's our dashboard started up. I'm not even going to look at the web application yet because we haven't made any changes there yet. But you can see, right, I called it DB server over there in my code there. DB server, there's the name of it, and it appears right there. We named our database that runs on DB server, we named it Big Bad Blog. And there's Big Bad Blog, and it doesn't have a source. It's not a container image. It happens to be, and we can see, it's a Postgres database resource that's running on the DB server there. And it doesn't really have an endpoint. It's the database server that has an endpoint. And look, the database server, it's not running on the standard Postgres database endpoint, right? It's on a different port. It's on that 51348. Okay. So now the question is, how does the website know about the Postgres database? Let's look at the details over here. So I click into details. I clicked view there, and it's going to show me information about that resource so that we can take a look and see exactly what's going on under the hood here. So it shows me the name, the state of the resource, when it was started. That's in my local time. Where the project actually lives, the process ID. That's fine stuff. That's good system-y stuff. And if I scroll down here, now I can see the endpoints that Aspire is managing for me. And here's the environment variables that Aspire started that project with, right? These are process-specific environment variables that are injected so that it knows how to start things. And there's the reference to the Big Bad blog. Aspire, when you use the with reference, okay, when you use that, will generate, depending on what type of service it is, an appropriately named configuration variable, an environment variable that turns into a configuration variable with whatever the name of the service is. In this case, Big Bad Blog, because that's the name of our database up here. So when I'm in my website and I say, hey, I want the connection string for Big Bad Blog, it's going to give me a connection string here that doesn't point to DB server. It points to the appropriate host and port and username and a generated password. And it's hard to see here behind me. I can move that over just a smidge. There we go. And the appropriate database name. Okay. So when we talk about service discovery for .NET Aspire, what it's doing is orchestrating and sending these environment variables around so that when you use the Aspire enabled features in this case, ASP.NET Core, they'll discover and use the real names and locations of the services that you want to pick up and work with. Okay. So that's where that is. Similarly, the output cache is pointing to the appropriate location for the Redis server up here, so it knows how to connect that. Let me catch up with a couple of the questions out here. I had that question from Sean. Red Owl says, is there a reason why all the Aspire demos use Postgres? We know hosting SQL Server in a container is slow, but is this the case for all the other databases apart from Postgres? It is absolutely a performance thing. Delivering demos like this, it takes a lot of processing power on my machine. Using Postgres is very lightweight, very small, and it's something that's portable, that just works everywhere. It also shows that this works with not just Microsoft resources. We have demos out there that do use SQL Server. Using Postgres, though, is nice and small, and for smaller databases that we might be using in a development environment, it's a convenient way to show using other database providers. We could absolutely use MySQL here and work with that as well. I happen to like Postgres. Let's see example of variables and how they're created. We'll get to it. It's coming up. Here we go. With Aspire, we don't need to challenge ourselves with Kubernetes or Docker. That's right. It will manage all of that for you. Thank you, Sean, saying Microsoft really knocks it out of the park with library design. Thank you. That's very kind. So, and all the open telemetry configuration stuff is down here. We'll talk about that in a future episode. In fact, I might even put a card up on the screen here with a link to that next episode if I could remember to come back and do that. Okay, so you can see how the connection string is passed in as a reference here, okay? Running locally, though, I'm going to have some test data in things that I'm going to have that I want to work with that I want to persist when I'm working locally. In order to do that, we need to add a little bit more configuration for the database up here. I want to particularly take that database server, and I want to make sure that it manages a volume. Manage it someplace on disk. I don't care where it is, but manage it so that it persists that data between runs. Otherwise, it's going to knock it out and remove that stuff. Did I do that wrong? Is it not DB server? Is it just DB? Did I? No, I was right. DB server. Right, with volume. And I thought we could... I thought there was... Why am I blanking on this? Why? No, it was DB server. It's data volume, isn't it? Yeah, data volume is the one on that one. All right. See, this is what I get for not having my documentation all in front of me. And I'm doing this by memory. So with data volume says create a volume, create a space on disk that we can persist our settings. When we do that, we also want to manage and keep our database password around. Yeah, with data volume. Thank you, David. See, I've got the code complete and written over here, but I'm trying to do this by memory, so I'm not looking back and forth. So now I've got a data volume. Well, if I'm persisting stuff to disk, what the Aspire Postgres component does is it also manages and resets and issues a new password each time for that. Well, we probably want to persist that password. There's several ways that we can persist that password, and the easy way that I like to do it, there's a configuration option that you can use to define and specify it. I like to get in and start using parameters for this because these are features that you're going to use when you deploy. So let's start defining a database password as a parameter here. Now, a parameter is something that you're going to store as a configuration parameter for your application system. We happen to be using it here for the database, but that parameter then is going to get, as we saw, hydrated and used and passed into our website as part of that environment variable. So I'm going to name this my database password because I am lame and can't think of a creative name for that. No, I'm going to write this to disk, and I don't think that's the right syntax anyway. So the next value that we have here is, yeah, it's only two parameters there. Is this a secret? Yes, it's a secret. We want nobody to know this. So it gets persisted and saved and shared out there appropriately when we get into a production space. So why am I getting... no, I don't have 3 arguments. I only specified... No. What are you doing? Thank you. All right. Now, that parameter needs to come from somewhere. And when we're in development, we can specify our parameters in app settings. So I can add an entry here for parameters. And Copilot, you're getting it. I didn't ask you for that. Thank you. And I can call this, put whatever password I want here. It doesn't matter. It's local and it's only on my system. So I'm going to call it something like this. There we go. All right. That should actually be, there you go, chat rules. That's my password for this application. And it's going to grab that and bring it in here. And of course, if you wanted that to be a secret, you wanted that to be something that nobody else on the team sees, for the purposes of development, you don't really need to do that, but you can use the Manage User Secrets feature and write a similar branch in here if you'd like. But you don't need to do that. So now that I've defined a database password, when I declared my Postgres database here, check it out, I can tell it, right? And this is where I need to move things around so we can fit it on screen. I want to tell it that my password is the database password parameter. So it's not just text that we're passing in here, but it's a parameter that's going to be passed around and managed by the orchestration for us. Okay? That's an important thing in order for us to keep things secure by default. Because as we're learning, as we grow in our web development journey here, managing and passing passwords around can be a little tricky to manage. And having a single entry point for a password in this case also makes it easy for us to rotate that password in the future. And if you've watched my other live streams, you know that I do accidentally share my passwords occasionally on screen. Diwakar, I'm sorry, that's a bit off topic for me for right now. We have an AMA in the first hour of the stream. Happy to answer in that next time. Sorry. Can you specify section and not just key value? When you do add parameter, it looks in the parameters section of app settings. It will generate and pass in appropriate section key value into your other applications when you call for it. So I've got with data volume here to specify that we're going to save this to disk. It's going to use that password, so it'll always use that same database password. And I can also then specify, because I want to see it actually create this stuff, I can also light up pgadmin so that I get that Postgres admin user interface in a web browser to work with automatically here. All I've done is update my Postgres configuration, and I'm using regions here, and I can hear David laughing in the background. I'm using regions because it helps to make more complicated versions of this file a little bit more easier to curate and focus on. This is just the code we're working on right now. Okay. So save that, and I'll go restart this, and you'll see that it's using our password, and pgadmin starts up appropriately for us. Yeah, I know, regions. I would organize it into static method names, but that feels like overkill, just to do a little organizing in the file. So here we go. There's pgadmin is running out there, and there's my database server, and I can look at the logs for the database server. I can see that it built, and it's running, and its user Postgres is out there doing their thing. And if I go down to my web project, we look at the details, and we scroll down to look at that connection string for Big Bad Blog, right? And we take a look. Of course, the password that it's passing in, it's coming from that parameter. It's been configured for the database, and it's available here as chat rules, okay? So we can rotate and move our password, and it'll reset it for the database and reset it here, all from that one parameter, okay? That's pretty cool. And of course, pgadmin is out here working, doing its thing, and that has an endpoint. So I can click into that. I didn't have to go and do some sort of weird configuration or stuff. It's built in here for us. And there's the database server, DB server. That's what I called it, DB server. There it is. The database isn't built yet. Just the default Postgres database is in there. So we need to start moving things into Entity Framework and get it set up so that we have our Big Bad Blog out here that we're working with and using and connecting to, that we can start seeing and working with tables out here. It is really convenient. Yeah. Yeah. Can we configure all resources and configuration using files in Aspire, or do we need to use C# to configure the resources? Aspire right now is configured to use C#. Nothing prevents you from writing some sort of configuration framework that will read a YAML file and turn it into C# commands that Aspire turns back into YAML files. Sure, you can do that. We think C# is a very productive and friendly way to do this because, as you saw, as I was going through and working with AppHost, I get IntelliSense, I get a compiler that checks the syntax, and I get GitHub Copilot suggesting things for me. That's all pretty good stuff, right? So I can go through here, and IntelliSense suggests other things for me. I can change, right? I can change my my image tag. Hey, I want you to use a different Postgres image tag. Sure, I can do that right here, and I'm getting help from my editor. I'm getting a compiler that's checking that, right? Because if I were to misspell that, well, gosh, I wouldn't know until runtime that it's actually starting this, and you're toast. But I've got an editor that's giving me that help. So that's why we think that C# is a better way to do this, to script and organize this. We're going to get to deployments in about 2 more episodes. AZD gives you default set of templates, and there is a magnificent way that you can inject and customize the deployment with bicep templates when you want to deploy out to Azure. I've used those extensively on my other streams where we're configuring and running the aspirify.net website. So I can talk more about that on those episodes. I need to get through the content I want to teach today. Okay. So I have my Postgres database out there. I want to hook that up now with Entity Framework and migrate from just saving these markdown files on disk. While that was really nice for our fictional Arthur the author that just wrote a Razor Pages application with some markdown files that worked great for him, we want to put this into a database and start using Entity Framework to save and work with that and use Postgres. Oh, Napalm, yeah. I've got a great story around that stuff that ask me on tomorrow's stream. Tomorrow's stream, for those of you that don't know, we met some fundraiser goals. And tomorrow, we met some fundraiser goals for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. I'm running a fundraiser on that channel. I'll be dressed as a squirrel during that stream tomorrow. Tune in over there and enjoy the chaos tomorrow. Let's add Entity Framework with Postgres into my web project, and we're going to start wiring up and migrating from managing markdown files on disk into using a database. So I'm going to browse up here, and I'm going to go get Aspire Postgres, and this is going to show me a handful of packages available. I'm going to particularly grab this one, Aspire NPG SQL. That's the name of the library, NPG SQL. But it's been approved, it's been verified by the Aspire team to work with Entity Framework and the Postgres database. So I'm going to go install that. Yep, go ahead, that's fine. And that's going to give me the ability to work with Postgres now inside my website. I've got about a half hour to go here. I need to pick up the speed. So normally, the way that this is working with SQLite here, it sets up this thing, application DB context, and SQLite, and we're going to set up developer exception page, blah, 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 blah. That's a lot to do in here. If I was just using Postgres here, I would do something like builder services, add NPG SQL, and away we'd go. And it would reference and be able to do things. But I want to use Entity Framework with this. And this is going to allow me to go and configure all the things for my application DB context. Right? And I need to specify, well, where's that coming from? Well, it's coming from the Big Bad Blog. Now, make sure I have that right. Now, hang on, I've got this. What did I do? Yeah, there it is. And add NPG SQL DB context. This is the Aspire entry to that same feature. Application DB context. And now what's the name of the connection? It is, we specified over there, Big Bad Blog. And now it knows how to take that application DB context that had all the things about users and roles and claims and push it over to that Postgres database. That's kind of cool, and I don't need these things anymore. I do want the builder services. I don't really need this one because we've just moved it out of SQLite, so I'll delete that. But we do need to configure this for the identity user that we're going to be using. And Razor Pages, I'll just move that down for a little bit, right? So that works. Dopair, you're coming right into where I'm about to talk here. So if I run this right now, it knows where that DB context is. It knows how to connect to the database, but the database isn't created out there. Those tables aren't created out there. We need to do something with migrations to get in there and allow us to interact with it. And when I try and go to the website, it works because it's not actually using anything with the database yet. But that could get a little hairy. That could get a little dicey as soon as we start wanting to try and interact with the database. And I want to start creating and pushing my post metadata into the database. So what do? How do we start doing that? Now, I'm going to show you my very opinionated way to do this. And here's where David starts to judge me. Not that he hasn't been judging me already. I'm going to create another project that defines the database interactions. I've also got an iPost repository out here. That's kind of a common thing that we're going to share between a couple different projects. So I should probably put that into another library that we can start to share out there and work with. So let me add a new project out here. And I'm going to start with a class library. And I'm going to call this Big Bad Blog Common. Because this is going to contain the common things that we're going to share across a multiple series of projects, including that iPost repository. In fact, I'm just going to yank it. I'm going to grab it right there and drop it into the common project. Make sure that I rename this from Big Bad Blog to bigbadblog.common. In fact, I should probably... No, I'll just leave it right there like that. That's fine. And I've also got my post metadata here that it knows how to work with. I'm going to go back over to the web project. Something that I learned from our friends David and Damien the other day. I can add a reference to that common project by just dropping it on the web over here. I'm going to go into the program up here at the top. And I'm going to add another global using for Big Bad Blog Common. Thank you, Copilot. And now it knows again what iPost repository is. But it's still pointing to this markdown post repository. I don't like having this service name lingering out here also. We're going to get rid of that in the future, but coming soon. I'll leave it at that. And I'll delete this class 1 over here. So let me add another project that's actually going to do all the Postgres things for us that's specific to Postgres, implements that repository pattern, and has all the Postgres concerns over there. Okay? So I'm going to call this Big Bad Blog Data Postgres. I'm going to put all my Postgres stuff over there. And this is a way for us to isolate exactly our connections and interactions with Postgres. Repository pattern on top of EF. Yes. No. It will be your choice, and I will show you why, Michael. I will show you why. Okay? So I've already got this markdown post repository that knows how to read content from disk. That's fine. It does its thing, and it's okay. But over here, I'm going to set up, first off, I need to set up what my post looks like in a Postgres database. So I'm just going to call this PG post. Okay? And I have the definition of what a post is over here. And let's put this side by side so we can see. Now I need to put it on the bottom. All right, fine. Fine, I'll put it on the bottom because it's just a record down there. There we go. Hide you over here so we can see. A post contains, well, a file name, title, author, and the date that it's published. Okay, so let's do this. Let's set up first a series of properties, right? So an ID, and we're of course going to make this, well, I do want a title, but I don't want it up there. Like, you got a little aggressive there with me. Okay. Yes, we need to always have a title, and it should have a max length. 100 is just fine. Let's see, what else do we need? An author? Sure. There's that. We need to have an author, and max length, sure, 100 is just fine. All right. Right, the date time. Now, the date time is kind of a weird thing in Postgres. It doesn't manage time zones very well in Postgres. So you kind of have to force it to be a UTC date time, even though it isn't. Trust me. It's weird. I've been through the demo a bit, and it was weird. It was. I'm also going to set up the slug, and I'm going to do this just a little bit. No, I'm going to leave this the way that I had it. Sure, complete that. This is required, and it's important you always set a max length. Otherwise, if you don't, it'll assume the maximum max length. So you might end up with like text storage instead of a little varchar for some of these things. Datetime offset does not work properly with Postgres. It has problems dealing with the time zone information. By doing that, by working with the time zone in Postgres, it's convenient for us. Postgres chokes on it, and you end up needing to bring in some data value converters, and it's not a topic that I want to get into as part of this demo. So I have my post. Yeah, folks were saying, hey, you can use required on that. Sure, let's put required on these also. By putting required up on the data annotation, it's also going to generate not null entries when Entity Framework generates the SQL scripts. So let's rename this file. Yep, there we go. And now let's create that repository. I'm going to call this PG repository. That's fine. I do want this to be an internal class, and I'm going to have it refer to iPost repository. Yep, add that reference. Give me the using statement. Thank you so much. And implement the interface. PG repository needs to reference and use a Postgres application DB context. Well, I've already got application DB context sitting over there inside my web project. So let's go just grab that and bring it over into this project. So, and I will rename my namespace here. I believe I can just, yeah, there we go. And I need to bring in some other features here so that it knows what identity DB context is. Sure. Go add that package. Done. All right. Migrated, it knows what it is. Now, I want this context to also know what a collection of posts are. So let's create that property. That's a DB set of PG post. And I'll call that posts. I'm also going to make this... Nah, let's leave it public for right now. No, I was thinking correctly. I'm going to make this internal. What do you see we do with this? Now, my PG repository needs access to the Postgres database. So I'm going to set up a primary constructor here so that it knows, and we can only create this when we have a DB context. Oh, you know what we forgot on our post? You know what we forgot on our post? We forgot content. Man, we forgot content. Public string content. Now, I'm not going to provide a max length on this because I want it to give you as much space as possible to create your content and save it in the database column. If you were using Mongo or some other NoSQL database, this would be great for them and those database providers because it allocates and manages that space nicely for you in your database collections. All right. So now I have content and I have posts over here looking good. So let's finish that repository pattern. I have these two implementations. So let's implement it. Get posts from the application DB context, post collection based on the slug specified. Done. Get a collection of posts ordered in date descending order. Yeah, based on the count and page. Do that. Good, done. I didn't have to think. It just generated it for me. All right. Oh, we got to return that thing. So let's just do a return. Right? No, actually we're just off of this. And this isn't quite right either. So we need to return that, right? So what I will do is I will return, well, I need to turn the post into post metadata and the actual content from it. Okay, so let's go back over to PG post and let's write a little converter for this to make it really easy to convert between the two types. No. Add an explicit converter to post metadata. Oh, yeah. And it's not quite the right syntax, right? Because it's a record, so I need to change this up just a little bit. It doesn't have a file name. It does have a title, so I'll just bring that in. Come on now. Right, post title. It does have an author, so we'll put that in there. And it does have a date. Cool. Done. I need to also be able to go the other way. Yeah. There we go. So now it goes the other way. I can pass in post metadata and it turns it back into a post for when we want to save things to disk. Not quite complete what we need there, but it's close enough. So in here then, when I want to return this, right? Yeah, do that. Thank you. Return the posts and content. Good, done. It's got all the formatting, everything I need to do that. All my stuff to work with Postgres is now isolated and in one project. I need to make that available to my web application. So we're going to add some extensions. So let's make sure I can do this one right. We're going to make some extension methods here because I really like the syntax of being able to just say add transient, add whatever, and it just does it for me. Okay. So let's set up public static. I'm going to return a host builder, and we're going to call this add Postgres features. We're going to receive an iHost builder called builder. iHost builder generically refers to that web host builder that we're using to configure our application. All right. So I like the fluent syntax of this, so I need to make sure I return builder at the end of this. Now I can register my post repository with the Postgres information. No. Did I do this wrong? Builder. Come on now, Copilot. You're getting in my way. Kind of. What did I do wrong here? Look at my source code. Go back to the code. I've got this written. Let me just double check what I've got. See? There's the completed code sitting out there. I'm doing this by hand, man. I'm doing this by hand. Host application builder. That's what I did wrong. Wrong reference. Now we can do this. Now I can do add. I have the wrong. I need to make sure I have my Postgres package installed, entity framework, and we're also going to include the identity packages. Make sure those are all available to us because I'm going to configure and run all of them out of this package. Give me the latest one of those. Good. So, oh heck, just copy the code over from the sample that I wrote. Like, it's already there. I don't need to tell you about this. There it is. Add application DB context. I've already started hiding this, but it is, right? Big Bad Blog is the name of that. Builder, and what did I call this? Just PG repository. There we go. What? Give me the using statement. There we go. So now I can go back over to my program for the website. How are we doing? Ooh, 15 minutes left. Piece of cake. So now where I was doing this to set up and this to set up, right? Because I have that over here, I can get rid of those. I'm just going to leave the Markdown repository for now so that I can do some migration for it. But I can say builder, add, what did I call it? Postgres features. Postgres, yes, thank you. And I'll let it add, nope. I need to add that reference to that project. Thank you so much. Come on now. No. And this part's going to go away in just a minute. Why am I not getting... I host application builder. Yes. Double check my source code. See, if I'd had this all written out from last night, yeah. Let me put it in here. It's in this namespace. Let me just add that namespace. So, oh, come on now. I know you know what that thing is. We're going to move this while we're here. And we're going to set up the identity, the ability to add identity as well over here as another extension method. I host application builder, add identity. I host application builder, and here's this thing. We'll paste in exactly that, and we'll return the builder. Cool. Right? Now I can go back over to program, and I can replace and say builder add, what did I call it? Identity. Now, I don't know why I'm not getting those come through. Package downgrade. Oh, fine. You want 802, I'll give you 802. What do we got? No. Ah. All right. Now I don't have migrations over here anymore. Get rid of those because we're going to move them and we're going to get them started. Is there a way to reach the default host builder from the app host? No. Oh, I forgot the this. Yes, I forgot the this on these extension methods. Thank you. There we go. I can see it already lighting up. No, I spelled it wrong. I spelled it wrong. Fine. There we go. All right. So now I have my Postgres features available to me, and it knows how to interact with all the application DB context. All of the stuff to configure and work with Postgres is inside of this project over here. Okay. I can start and run this, and it knows now how to go get content from that, but I don't have database migrations for this yet. I need to create database migrations so that it knows how to create and work with those things I added to my application DB context, particularly the posts. So let's go generate those database migrations. So I'm going to do that by dropping into the web project, just like I normally would. And I'm going to run .NET EF migrations add, and we're going to call this, of course, my first migrations, because they are my first migrations. And I'm going to specify the project that it outputs to, because I want to output it to the Big Bad Blog, not app host, but to the Data Postgres project. So this is going to build, create the migration, and move it into the project that has all the Postgres specific stuff. This is important because the migration has stuff that's specific to Postgres built into it. As much as the EF team tried and make the migration stuff be database provider agnostic, the migrations have stuff that's specific to the database provider written into there. Fine. So if we take a look back in our project over here, inside my Postgres, there's my migrations, and you can see where it's going and creating and working with all the table stuff. And if I look, right, there's my posts table, and it's creating it right there. Okay? So I have a way to create posts and deliver and show that information. The last piece that I need is a way to run those migrations, and I don't want them to run every time the website starts up. I want to do something that's going to create and run them and kind of hand things off and be done with it. So we're going to add a worker process. We're going to add our first secondary process that runs as part of the application system. Check this out. So I'm going to go create a worker service. This is something that's been in .NET for a long time, so that you can set up worker services that run in the background on Windows, Mac, or Linux. But we're going to create one here. Make sure I give it the right name. Give it the right name, Fritz. Service database migration. And this is going to run on Linux. It's going to build with a Docker file, and I'm going to enlist it in the Aspire orchestration. Totally cool. Here we go. So there's, oh, I did it with a Docker file. I didn't want that. No matter, that's fine. So I'm going to set up this database migration worker project so that it knows about the Postgres application, right? It knows about the libraries and how to work with Postgres. It's already, because I had that checkbox marked, it's already enlisting in the Aspire configuration. It's right there, right? So you've moved things around here on me, right? Move. You're okay. I'll just leave it right there for now. And we'll close that. I'm going to update and just copy in the things for the migration here so that I can be sure we get done on time. So I have the code sitting out here on disk. Inside program, we already had create application developer and add service defaults. Well, add hosted service for the worker. We're going to add the DB context for the application DB context. I can actually do that. And I'm going to add the telemetry as well. But here's the thing. This part, I got you. I can add, right, Postgres features. Add that. Done. Over here, we know that we want to give it an activity name for how it's running these things so we can trace it later. So I'll go back over and I'm just going to grab the syntax for the background service here. The worker service. Where is it? Worker here. Paste that in and we'll talk about what this is doing. So this is going to get its service provider, its application lifetime, and a logger. Stash those. When this executes, it's going to go get the database context for the application DB context. Make that public, fine. For right now, let's get this done. I'll have the DB context, and I want it to run its migrations. Start up, as it's executing, go get the database context that it already has all my configurations set up for it. We're going to migrate it, and if there's any errors, we're going to record those with our telemetry. Okay? That's it. We've added a service that knows how to do the migration and copy the stuff out here. Last thing that I want to do, way down here at the end of my website program here, let's back up one folder. I'm going to go into the web, and I've actually written a little bit of code to copy those existing markdown files into my Postgres database. So I'll just write it right here before it runs. So go get a markdown post repository. That's what we used to use. Go get the currently configured post repository. And we're actually going to write a method here to post the item. So I'm going to generate that method inside of my repository. I'm going to implement that bit of the interface. Where'd it go? Right there. Add a new post to the database. No. You're not going to do this for me nicely, are you? There we go. And we'll say pg post dot. Now the date, we need to actually, we need to, what is it? Equals new date time. And we need to specify its UTC. It's annoying, but we have to do that. That's a Postgres thing. And we're going to specify the content is item 2. Add post to the database. Do it. Thank you. Save it. And we should probably do that asynchronously. You know what I'm saying? That'd be nice. Control dot. Make the method async. Boom goes the dynamite. The over here, the markdown repository is going to crow because it doesn't know how to implement that. Fine. Just save that off. And now we've got a little method that knows how to add posts. Let's see if we made it. Here we go. It's going to start up, and we're going to see we have now 2 services running. We have our database migration service, and we errored out. Oh! We know what this is. We know what this is. Back over to app host. You know what we forgot to do? When we configured the project, we need to tell it about the database. With reference, DB. Now it knows what the database, the migration service knows what the database is, so it'll find it, run, and be able to migrate. There it is. And yeah, I know it doesn't exist. I know. This is, yeah, I know. We're working on it here. There's the database migration service. If we look at the logs here, check this out. It went and created everything in the database. So let's go restart everything one more time. Now that things are in the database. And the migration service right here, finished because there's nothing to migrate. The website is running. And now I've got website articles coming from the Postgres database. I can look inside pgadmin. Oh, we're right at time. Man, I hit the post on this one. We'll wait for pgadmin to show up, and we'll be able to look. Yes, I know, it's not done starting yet. We'll be able to look inside our posts table and see our posts. Here it comes. Servers, DB server, that's what we named it. Databases, big bad blog, there it is. Take a look at my tables. It's inside a public schema, yes. Tables, look at this, open up tables. There's all my ASP.NET roles. There's posts. Show me all the posts. Yes, I know, you're showing me stuff. And there they are, all moved over from Arthur the author, named and created appropriately, migrated into our database. Nice. Nice. All right, we've covered a lot. We came a long way on this. I want to wrap things up here. Let's get things wrapped up and moved out here. We did a ton. We created a Postgres database. We set it up so that it's getting information about that database, putting it into our web project. We even isolated all of our Postgres concerns inside of another project where we could manage our migrations. And then we set up a little migrations worker service that will apply those migrations for us. And there was a problem. I don't see it there on the list. That migration ran out of order from when the website runs. We need to figure that out and get that addressed next time. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you joining, being a part of today's stream. We went through, we learned a lot. We covered a lot. All the source code for this are over in the GitHub repository. If you're watching on YouTube, it's linked just below in the description. I need to finish up some documentation and get that little bit of content merged over there. Next time, we're going to start to bring security into the mix and get that lit up and running in the database. We're going to start doing some more features to start reusing and moving things around and making this a little bit more like a real blog, a real content management system. All right? Stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure writing code with you today. I know I didn't get to all the questions in chat. Paste them in the comments down below. I'll try to get to them before next week, but I will see you next week, next Wednesday, right here on the channel, talking about great things you can do with Aspire and showing you how you can make your web application easier for more folks in your organization, on your project team, to build and work with and grow. Make sure you check out my live streams tomorrow. I'll be on YouTube and Twitch. On the CSharpFritz channel, we're going to be building and working on the aspirify.net website. That's a website that's a news hub for all things, all resources, sample code, tutorials, videos, blog articles, all about .NET Aspire. If you want to find great content about it, there's search features there and all kinds of great content on aspirify.net. We're building that live on my channel. And if you stop by tomorrow, I'm going to be dressed as a squirrel, and we're going to do a Hot Ones style chicken wing eating session. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're watching us on YouTube, check out the other videos in the series. You can go back to the previous video. It's in the playlist. It might be down here or over there or over here. I don't know. If you're watching on your TV or something, it's on the YouTube. You can find the rest of the playlist. Learn C# with CSharpFritz. And if you're watching on Twitch, it's time for a raid. Let's see who else is streaming on the big Twitch TV network that we can get you connected to, that's doing something fun, doing something interesting with tech, that we can go over and raid and show them a little bit of support for all the cool stuff that they're working on their channel. And I think we're going to go and join, our friend Lana Lux, who's building a game with Unity. Really great stuff. I'm always impressed with the stuff that Lana is working on. And there we go. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can join us on Lana's channel. There's a link to it for you if you'd like to click through. All right. Have a fantastic rest of your day, wherever you might be. Until I see you tomorrow, I wish you good health and good coding. Take care.